My name is Ralph Smith. I've been writing a number of articles for FitSmith over the last number of years, and I've had several decades of working in and around the federal government as an employee and as a government contractor for several decades. So one of the first things I learned when I started working for the government, which was part of the Treasury Department at the time, I'd passed the entrance exam, I'd gone through all the steps necessary to get a job, and I wanted to do a good job. So when I started there, I quickly decided I need to find out what's going on in this vast bureaucracy that, frankly, was kind of overwhelming. All the rules and regulations, and trying to decide how to do a good job. So I found a couple of people around who had 20, 30, 35 years of experience. And I asked them, what do I do? We've got a new president now, and he's making changes. And that's fine. I don't even know the existing system. But what do we do? How do we implement these changes? And basically, I was told by one of them, look, I've been around this agency for 30 some years, and presidents come and presidents go. We're responsible for making sure our programs for which we have responsibility are implemented successfully. So I was running it before this president came in. He'll be gone, and I'll be running this same program after he leaves. And if we run it and we do a good job, it runs well, the politicians take the credit for it. If it doesn't run well, they'll assign the blame to us. That's how it works. So don't worry about it. Don't make the changes that they're talking about. They're not that relevant anyway. And we'll go from there. Now, why is that important? Well, that was a long time ago. But apparently, according to several people within the first Trump administration, the same type of attitude exists. And President Trump refers it to draining the swamp. He wants to change that system. And the way he tried to do it in his first term was what he called Schedule F. And essentially, what Schedule F would have done had it gone into effect, which it never did, before he left office, it would have changed career employees in some positions into at will employees, meaning they'd be moved into a different career category, Schedule F, and that if they weren't working to help the administration accomplish its goals, they could be fired. And in order to make this happen quickly, they would be taken away from the protections that civil service employees have. Well, President Trump is now in his second term, and in the first day in office, he issued an executive order addressing the same topic, and he called it ensuring accountability. So he issued the executive order, OPM issued guidance to agencies, and agencies were given 90 days to come up with a list of employees that fell into this new category of employees. They would still be career employees, but they would be considered policy career classification employees, meaning they'd be put into a different classification. And if they weren't doing the job that the supervisor, anybody in the agency in a powerful position thought that person wasn't helping them implement the administration's objectives, they could be removed easily, quickly. It's hard to fire a federal employee in the sense that they have a lot of appeal rights. By the time the appeals are exhausted, sometimes it easily takes several years for an employee to be fired. The administration under Trump doesn't want to do that. They want to make it quicker, easier, faster. So that's what the purpose is of what used to be called Schedule F. Now it's simply called Policy and Career Classification. It's moving on. This last week, on Friday evening, actually, President Trump issued a fact sheet. And in his fact sheet, he referenced that OPM would be issuing a proposed rule. And the purpose of the proposed rule is moving ahead to create this new category of federal employees. The 90 days federal agencies were given to identify which employees would be put into this new category is just about up. So presumably, OPM has an idea about how many employees would be affected and moved into this new category. OPM estimates around 50,000 people. Now, when this was done back in 2020, some people estimated as many as 200,000 people would eventually be impacted and put into an at-will type of job. We don't really know how many people will be impacted, but it is moving forward. So we'll find out. OPM has issued a proposed rule, or is about to issue a proposed rule, that would actually go ahead and move forward on creating this category of employees, and agencies would, after it becomes effective, start moving employees into this new category. So here's what's going on. President Trump calls it draining the swamp. And the reasons he gives for creating this new category are some of the following. He said that the OPM rule, when it's issued, would empower federal agencies to swiftly remove employees in policy influencing roles. And the kinds of reasons that they would be removed would include poor performance, misconduct, corruption, or subversion of presidential directives without having to go through the lengthy procedural hurdles that they would now have to go through, assuming they maintain the same appeal rights that they've continued to have. And he cited several reasons for this, and it relates back to what I mentioned at first. James Shirk, who's a person who was helping the administration in the first term and apparently has some similar type of power in the second term, wrote an article that outlined what kinds of problems he ran into in trying to implement objectives of the administration. And most of it was not any direct refusal. It was simply people saying, well, yeah, we will do that. We're glad you told us that's what we're supposed to do, and we'll get right on it. He'd call back a week, 2 weeks, a month later, and they'd say, yeah, a lot of stuff's come up. We've been swamped. We haven't gotten to it, but we'll get right on it. In other words, they wouldn't implement the objectives that the administration was seeking. They didn't really refuse, they just never got it done. And to be fair, he also said that most people he dealt with were easy to work with. They did what he asked them to do. They'd discuss it. They'd go ahead and implement it. But not everybody. And it's the not everybody that they were trying to get rid of and put somebody else in their position that would help the administration implement their objectives. In effect, President Trump in his fact sheet said agencies don't hold employees accountable. They want to change that. Removing federal employees is lengthy and difficult. They want to get rid of that lengthy process, make it quick and easy. Bureaucrats use protections the system gives them to oppose presidential policies and impose their own preferences. In effect, this is what he's calling the deep state. Federal employees with a lot of protection, a lot of appeal rights, can't be fired, at least not quickly and easily, so they remain in the job for decades, imposing their own preferences, establishing policies they prefer, and ignoring what the administration wants them to do. He says, in effect, in his fact sheet, unaccountable bureaucracy undermines your democracy. And he wants to create a more democratic government by opposing or getting rid of people who are opposing the administration putting into place its objectives. Now, what would the impact be on federal employees if this goes through? First, at-will employment, meaning you can be fired quickly and easily. Secondly, the scope of positions. It targets career employees in policy influencing roles, not political employees, career employees. There's a distinction. And by saying it's people who make policy, it's not just those who sign the piece of paper. That may be a political appointee. They refer to it as a person who influences policy, recommends policy, publicizes policy. Anybody in a role that determines what that policy may ultimately be would be subject to be put into this new category of federal employees. Nonpartisan hiring. Appointments to these positions should remain nonpartisan and based on merit, not political affiliation. He's saying, in effect, we're not hiring just Republicans, we're not hiring just Democrats. We want people who will work with the administration, whoever is in power, to put these goals into place. And finally, no Chapter 43 or 75 protections. Employees who are put into scheduled policy career lose their coverage under Chapter 43, that is for performance, or Chapter 75, adverse actions for misconduct or other types of violations. The impact is they will not be able to appeal the removal to the Merit Systems Protection Board. Now, several things go into the determination as to what's in this final rule that OPM is going to be proposing probably in the next week. There's a 30-day, at least a 30-day, period for people to comment. Public can comment. Unions will certainly comment. Some federal employees may comment. Members of the press may comment. etc. We don't know what these comments will be. We don't know if it'll have any impact on the final rule, but we do know, based on past experience, there are probably going to be quite a few comments. Now, OPM may ignore them. They may implement some of them. They may change the proposed rules. We'll have to see. Secondly, several lawsuits have been filed involving this particular topic. In effect, the unions are arguing it violates due process, it's unconstitutional, etc. We don't know what the courts will do. Chances are this is going to end up going to the Supreme Court, as a number of other cases are going to be going also. One other thing that's going on right now, there's a strong feeling that the Supreme Court is about to issue a decision that would hamper the ability of district court judges to issue decisions that have a nationwide impact. The administration is arguing you have district court judges, and there's about 690 of them, issuing decisions that determine, or they would like to determine, the foreign policy of the United States. They would like to determine how the executive branch is run, etc. And the administration is arguing to the Supreme Court in several different cases that that's not how the Constitution intends the system to work. The president, as the chief executive, should have the power to run the executive branch. So various cases, including removal of the chairman of MSPB, the special counsel for the Office of Special Counsel, the National Labor Relations Board has been involved in some of these cases. These cases are all percolating. They're all going to the Supreme Court. And we don't know what will happen, what decision the Supreme Court will issue. We'll see. As this progresses, we'll certainly do other videos. We wrote an article and published it yesterday on this latest fact sheet and the new OPM proposed regulation. Take a look at the article. Please pay attention to what's going on. Some of you, perhaps 50,000, maybe 200,000 of you, will be affected by this new policy as it goes into effect. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy it, if you find it useful, consider subscribing to the newsletter that we have at fedsmith.com or the YouTube channel where we provide these videos for our readers and viewers. Thank you very much.